But we have a real treat, literally. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I think it's actually, if this blows up in my face, I apologize up front. If it's a hit, well, I'll be happy to take all the praise. But we have different, again, for the folk who are new, we have different topics every month, always the last Sunday of the month, because that's when I was always off work. And this is a unique thing. We always talk about great things in space flight, whether about going to the planets or asteroids or Earth resources, all the other things. And those are always usually pretty good with pretty pictures and funny stories and all the rest. But when you talk about food, it's a very different thing. A pretty picture doesn't count. It just doesn't cut it. So what we're doing is we're going to have, cross your fingers this doesn't blow up in my face, we're going to have a little bit of a tasting buffet. We have foods that you will find on the space station. Much of it is all stuff I went and got from the manufacturers who supply the space station. This is not flown. There's no way you're going to get food that's allocated for this. Just the accounting with the government would be nuts trying to get that. But almost everything here is exactly what you would find on the space station. And it's not terrible. It really isn't. A lot of it is military meals. A lot of it's basically camping food. And honestly, they've come a long way in getting pretty decent meals in a package that you can store for years. And it's all pretty clever. So, what's for dinner? We've been going into space for about 60 years. There's all kinds of different meals that they had. And in one of my poor screw-ups, not screw-ups, it was just something I couldn't get done in time, I was going to have the first food that was eaten in space by an American astronaut, John Glenn. Want to guess what the first food was? Go ahead. We'll talk pizza later.
Dehydrated ice cream.
Oh, no. No, not astronaut ice cream. No, dear God, no. We'll talk about that too. No, it was applesauce. Out of a toothpaste tube. Because you're all cramped in your capsule and all the rest. Well, it turns out I just retired. I used to work for Colgate-Palmolive at the research center up in Piscataway. And, well, I got toothpaste tubes. I got a bunch of them. And I was going to fill them up with applesauce and everyone could have whatever. But there's a special machine that actually seals the end. And it costs hundreds of dollars. I'm not going to spend it just for one thing. But we have a substitute. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so key thing to understand. Food's more than nourishment. That's a key thing in society as us, as humans. If I want nourishment, I get one of these. These are Coast Guard survival rations. Don't drop it on your foot. Steel tip shoes only. It is as hard, we'll pass it around. Don't bother eating it. But this is good. This is a complete, nutritionally balanced, blah, blah, blah meal for 3 days, one person.
Actually, tastes pretty good.
And I thought you were a friend.
Do you have to have water though?
No. You'll gag if you don't have water, but yeah, if you want to get an idea, the thing weighs a ton. But that's nutritionally balanced. Now, can you imagine on Thanksgiving Day, someone comes out and I've got the survival rations. Oh, Mom, the brick. It's not going to work. We do get together around food in our daily lives as part of a social thing. Again, I was just talking it's going to be the 4th of July. What's everyone really planning on? All right, the other thing. You know, we're all going to go out for a barbecue. We're all going to be going out visiting friends and family, maybe having one too many, adult beverages. But yeah, it's all about the food. Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the holidays. It's all about food. This is how people mesh in that social world that we live in. And yeah, think of that. This is what you think of, right? Norman Rockwell. Everyone just giggling and, oh God, here comes the turkey and, it's the holidays and family. And we were all like that, right? Well, maybe not. That's me. Yes, it's revealed. Me with that, oh my God, look. My baby sister was not happy that day. But 7 kids, look at the size of that turkey. I mean, that was a monster. And we had, that's what, I always thought turkeys were that big. Like nowadays I get a little turkey breast and all the rest. But anyway, this is dinner on the space station. This is what it looks like. And yeah, almost every evening, they try, not always happening, maybe not with everyone. They all try really hard to have a gathering of all the crew in one place to have dinner. Oh, maybe someone does have to run off and run an experiment or fix something or whatever. But the whole idea is, you're there, you're with your coworkers, and you've probably been busy all day and screaming at mission control, or it turns out one of the other guys is a knucklehead, or you didn't sleep. No, we get together and we relax and we chat and we just bitch about our days. And that's what makes the world go round. That's what makes good coworker relationships work. So, that's what dinner looks like. Doesn't look like a Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner that I had years ago. But this is what it looks like. One person, everyone gets an assignment. Well, you draw the straw, you end up setting the table. Get out everyone's dinners, you start heating it up, little bags of drinks. Yes, ma'am. You want to find out about the other things aside from the turkey?
No. We have our astronauts, Americans, are eating this food. What about the others?
We're going to go into that.
Oh.
And it's wonderful and terrible.
Right.
It all depends.
Yeah, I was thinking it's all American.
No, understand. And this is an important thing. Remember, the International Space Station is not the United States Space Station. It is owned by 12 different countries around the world. We have astronauts that are Russian, Chinese, not Chinese, but Japanese, all through Europe, Canada, and they all take turns being the commander. We have, every once in a while, an American will be a commander, then a Russian, then the Italians, and et cetera, et cetera. It is an international space station, and there's always 2 to 4 different nationalities on board at any given time. And so, again, please get out of your mind it's the American or U.S. space station. Half of it was built by other countries. We did a lot of the heavy lifting, but that was it. And so you have stuff from all around the world. Little packet down the lower left, that's from Italy. A lot of the canned stuff, which is, I guess, not brought out yet. Russian, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone loves to share. I mean, it's like if you go, your first time being on, as an exchange student, you're missing the experience if you go to McDonald's as you're backpacking through Europe.
So those items are not floating around because they're...
Well, take a look. There's not a lot of magnets, but these are elastic straps, and you see clips, and everything has a little spot of Velcro on it.
Oh, so you set the table...
You set the table. I mean, I had to do it when I was a kid. My other half makes me set the table now. I guess things never change. But yeah, and it all just sticks there. And again, you can see everything has a clamp or something like that. And you're not eating it out of a toothpaste tube. I don't know what she's eating. It's chicken something. Well, that's Suni Williams, who's going to probably fly on one of the new spacecraft in the next couple months. I forget if she was a space station commander. I think she might have been. Indian American woman. And when comes time to eat a meal with chopsticks, now it's not going to come out of a tube. And so she's a sharp lady if you ever get a chance to meet her. But anyway, so we go into the logistics and all the rest about putting together dinners in space or meals in general. And they have to be nutritious, they have to be balanced, they have to have the right calories, not too much of this. And again, astronauts being relatively fit, they really do want to have healthy meals as much as can be made. So, you have to be very, very careful about what you're making. So much of why we're in the space station is to study the human body and its reaction to space. So much of this is metabolic studies. And a lot of metabolic studies are all dependent on what you're eating and not eating. And so even though, all right, if you decide the fried rice isn't any good, at least mark it down that you didn't have it. Because the doctors are sitting there taking very good notes on this. The problem is, again, using the analogy of camping food, my sister loves to camp. She fills up the entire car, cooks the entire time. This is not that, what is it, glamping, I think it's called now? Glamping? No, this is not glamping. The idea is you pack up your food 6 months, a year in advance and have it sent ahead of you. And it's got to stay good. This stuff will stick around for a couple years and you will be able to eat it and you won't be able to tell the difference that it was either made the other day or 5 years ago. And that's tough to do. How do you package things? We'll learn. Oh, and also without refrigeration. All has to be able to be kept room temperature. Now, there's an interesting little human problem. It's really tough to smell in space. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. It's really tough to smell in space because one of the physiological things, I'm standing on Earth, the most important organ in my body is demanding, what is it, something like 20% of all the oxygen that my lungs take in and get circulated in my blood. But it's all the way up here, that's my brain. I'm standing up, my body, all of our bodies are designed to force fluid up so that when I stand up I don't pass out from lack of oxygen. In space, that mechanism still is working. It doesn't go away. And so, even though there's no gravity pushing down, your body is still pushing fluids up. So your head, you end up, your time in space feels like one big head cold. Believe it or not, they use a lot of Kleenexes just to clear out your head. It causes lots of effects. We've talked in the past about all the other nasty things zero gravity can do. But the thing is, if you're having a head cold, how good does food taste? It doesn't. It really doesn't. You lose your sense of taste and you kind of lose your appetite. And this is something you have to address. If the idea is to have good, appetizing food, what they find is you have to spice it up a lot. And so you see their spice cabinet. Everything from Sriracha sauce to Tabasco. It doesn't taste the same because it's not nearly as pungent because, again, 90% of your taste is through your nose. If you have a cold, you won't be able to, and you have this wonderful meal you prepared, you might as well just not try it as hard because you won't be able to tell the difference. So they have a whole spice cabinet to zip things up a bit. And of course, we have Tabasco sauce here for those. Anyway, so what's a regular menu look like? This is Neil Armstrong's. This was his first 4 days going to the moon. And the menus weren't nearly as sophisticated as they were today. As a matter of fact, this was the standard menu that was built years before. And so it's not real imaginative, but there's some interesting things on the menu items. Food is always the measure of the man, the idea that you are what you eat, et cetera, et cetera. One thing you notice, no coffee. And I'm thinking, oh, not a coffee drinker? It turns out, no, they didn't have coffee on any of the missions going to the moon. You learn that. But what you do see is interesting things. And again, we all have a little bit of our favorites or lack of favorites and all the rest. If you look, every day has at least 1, 2, and I think one day had 3. I don't know if I have it up there. Chocolate and pudding. Every day, cocoa drink, butterscotch pudding, chocolate bars, boom, boom, boom. That's what they ate in space on the way to the moon, at least Neil did. And the other guys' menus were kind of similar. Also, grapefruit and pineapple juice. This is 60 years ago, and for some of the younger folk, it might not be might seem a little bit odd, but I grew up in this day. My dad spent a lot of time in Asia, and the whole idea, and again, for younger folk, you might not get this, but the idea of Polynesian food, the idea of pineapples, you just didn't get pineapples in the supermarket. You might get a can of them, but nobody cared. But those were the days of pineapple upside down cake and pineapple this, and the idea of fruit cocktail having pineapple in it. So pineapple shows up a lot because it was almost an exotic treat, and the government's paying for it. So and it turns out it freeze dries pretty well, and all the rest. So this is what you eat on the way to the moon and on your way to history. By the time we get to the station, things have gotten a heck of a lot more sophisticated. They have taste kitchens, real ones, rather than the military plopping a block of something in front of you and saying, this tastes good, right? And you go, sir, yes, sir. You have hundreds of menu items to choose from now. And many of them are suggested by the astronauts themselves. So they have a standard core group of a menu that they'll make up. And then if someone has a particular mom's home cooking, they will see what they can do about making that as best they can with all the other parameters, stabilized and all the rest, long shelf life. And yeah, you can get it. And there's wonderful stories about that. Now, the last thing, you go in every day and you hear at work or at a restaurant, oh, this is your prefix menu, this is what you get, and so on. Well, what happens if you just don't want a menu item? They all look good when you thought of it 6 months ago, but right now, I'd like to swap. But it turns out they did this all the time. And so the nutritionists, I'm not going to say they gave up, but they stopped fighting. And now we have the concept of the pantry. And it's here's all your main courses, here's all your sides, here's all your desserts. And it's like, okay, you know what the objectives are. Don't screw it up. Take one from each. Report what you have so the doctors can take good notes. And mix and match your own meals. It's okay now. It used to be really rigorous. It really was. Now it's like, I feel like this. No.
So if you can choose your own order, if you can choose your own food, doesn't that put you in danger of not having the correct nutrition?
You're expected to be smart, and this is all, these are astronauts. They know the only reason why they're up there is to be a lab rat. And if they screw it up, they'll never fly again. And if that's not a good incentive.
They're personally responsible.
Oh, of course they are. And, again, it's not like, they're going to sit there and have brownies every day. Or chocolate pudding every day like Neil Armstrong did. Or butterscotch. Pardon?
Or the M&Ms?
There's a story about M&Ms we'll get to. It was called the Great M&M Caper. Anyway. So the idea is everything is reasonably balanced and all the rest. It's not like you're going to be, sitting in front of the, controls, just munching Doritos all day. So with this mix and match, and if it's appropriately recorded over time, it really does tend to balance out pretty well. And again, everyone loves to share. Think of like the first time you got a chance to go overseas with friends and family, to meet other friends and family, everyone shares. And that's part of the whole social aspect of food and eating. So what we do is we preserve the food multiple ways. How are you guys doing? Good. You're in for a treat, literally. Anyway, so it sounds like a great 75-cent NASA term called thermostabilization. Doesn't it? You're supposed to agree. Yeah. Ah, okay, good. Anyway, it's basically canning. It's heat stabilized, thermostabilized, but not in a can most of the time. And we're going to see how they're packaged right over here. They're in packages. And you find these a lot in various forms in the store already. Where there's, for example, I like to go hit the Indian section in the grocery store. If you want a prep mix or something like that, they all come in these packages. They're soft-sided and they're liquid inside. And that's thermostabilized. It is cooked while it's in the package. All the stuff that you buy canned, whether it's soup or chili or whatever, all of that is heated in the can, cooked, sterilized, so you don't get sick. Freeze-dried, we know all about that. We're going to have some freeze-dried, and some of it's actually good. Understand when we have our little taste test, a lot of this is not bad. Don't be afraid of it. Irradiated, yeah, they put it in front of a stream of gamma rays, and they zap the heck out of it. No, it doesn't make it radioactive, but it sterilizes it. And you can keep raw meat forever once it's been irradiated and not have to worry about it. So a lot of it, some of it's irradiated. Low moisture means stuff that would be like dried apricots. It's not changed in any other way. They're already, dried apricots, if you seal it, it'll last forever. And then you have the natural form. And there's some things you can't package any other way without screwing it up. Could you imagine if NASA engineers had to re-engineer the M&M? Or just a handful of cashews? I mean, what would that look like?
Make them square so they fit better in the package.
All right, you have a fair point there. I'll concede that. But yeah, natural form. I mean, you can't. The half of the goodness of M&Ms is that they're M's. So, here's an interesting little trend. In the early space days, and I guess now, even though it's kind of modern, it's close enough to calling it early. We used a particular type of technology to generate electricity, and as a waste product, fresh water. We had tanks of hydrogen and oxygen. Through a mechanism called a fuel cell, we combine those. It gives us our electric power, and its waste product is water. When you think of it, it's just the reverse of when we were in science class, taking water, running an electric current through it, and getting oxygen and hydrogen. The water goes away, now we have the gases. This is it run in reverse. And so, for the Gemini program, the Apollo program, the space shuttle, we ended up with tons of water. We actually dumped the water overboard because we made so much of it while we're making our electricity. But the space station uses solar panels. It doesn't use fuel cells. And so now we don't have this vast amount of water. In fact, water is one of the more precious resources on the station. So, in the early flights, the idea was, we can dry out the food, freeze dry it. We know we're going to be making a ton of water, so we can rehydrate it. It all balances out, right? Well, in the space station, you don't have that. So you might as well send all your food up already wet. Not have to add the water to it. Because you don't have an excess of water. We're not dumping it overboard anymore. They only recycle about 85%. And so they constantly need resupply to just keep replenishing it. But yeah, they recycle it, but they're not creating water. It always has to be shipped from the ground.
What happens to the 83%? Why can't we just...
Oh, that turns into, okay, all right, on the space station, recycling water, what does that mean in a lot of ways? You're recycling urine, for example. Yesterday's coffee goes through you and it becomes tomorrow's coffee. Get comfortable with that. Hey, you're in space. Like I said, it's roughing it. So, but using urine as the obvious, really nasty example, that contains various solids and chemicals that you don't want, even though we count it as, say, a bottle of urine. And that is that 15% that isn't recycled. And trust me, you don't want it. You know, we won't go there. I mean, we're not going to get into bathroom humor here, I hope. Anyway, all the beverages, however, are all dehydrated just for space. And when you think of it, if you have kind of like a fresh fruit drink, if it sits around in liquid state, I mean, if you forgot that thing of orange juice in the fridge, honestly, it's not good after a few months, and you have to keep this for a couple years. So, anyway, so you want to rehydrate everything? There's a machine for that. There's an app. And it's a little button up on the corner. You can see how much water you want to put in it. You plug in your food, press the button, hot or cold, and it fills it up, and you wait 10 minutes. You're good. That's how you rehydrate things. That's your cooking at on the station. All right, maybe not cooking. This is what an Apollo meal looked like. It was all dehydrated, virtually all of it, some natural form. But yeah, in the little thing with the black ring on it, that's where you plug in your water hose. It's a little squirt job. And then you cut that off, and you just cut off the valve because it's one way. Or on some of them, you open up the top, and you had a spoon you could eat out of. Made it a lot more palatable. I mean, sitting there squeezing something into your mouth contrasted with eating it with something close to a utensil. Again, remember, we're talking psychological. If you want to just survive, you have those bricks. And hey, you're going to the moon, you expect at least a little bit. Skylab, our very first space station, we got sophisticated. We really did. Now, even though we don't have fuel cells to make our water, so now we're bringing it up in more natural kind of forms. Almost everything was in a can. And now you had a regular dining room, as much as you can call on a space station a dining room. So you had little compartments. 3 of them had heaters in them. And your job for making dinner is you get everyone's food, you pop them in the warmers, turn on the switch, let it heat up for 20 minutes, and then everyone has a nice, I mean, I've been on airlines, the food doesn't look this good, right? I mean, and honestly, it's not bad. You had that little, they stopped using it, but it was a great idea. This little squeezy thing that had all of your beverage in it, and it just expanded out when you filled it with water and you shook it up, and it was a great idea. It turned out the plastic split a lot. But you ate with knife and fork and you had a real meal. Everything is a tad sticky. Because if you had a soup, it would just float out, and that would be wrong. So everything, so you had kind of like a sticky sauce, or you had something to hold it into the cup. And it worked. It worked pretty well. They thought that worked out pretty decently. This is what the guys on the shuttle, this is a standard meal on the shuttle. You're going to see some of the cheese spread or whatever. And everything is in these packets. A few things are, rehydratable. Because again, the space shuttle is creating so much water, you might as well use it. And so, time to rustle up dinner, pull them all out of the storage area. That's your dinner. Here you have the black thing is a steak. You have orangeade, you have some cashews, some sausage, spinach, cream spinach, which I love spinach, but once you cream it, no. I'll eat spinach right out of the bag.
Question, I often think about if I had been an astronaut, I'd be in a real trouble if I
Oh, well, you'd never fly. Simple as that. No, I mean, you wouldn't even get through the interview
Doesn't
stage.
that happen to these astronauts? Doesn't the food
We'll talk about that.
want to?
Not really. Not really.
I understand the digestive system kind of is tight and moves.
No, I mean, it pretty much works the same way it does here. But honestly, we were really surprised, that it turns out you can eat and swallow and, pretty much the same way you do on Earth. That was a good thing to find out, because if it wasn't, we'd be in deep, dark, serious trouble. Anyway, the Russians have a little bit different packaging. They like all their food canned. And, you know, if they want their pickled God knows what, or, you know, whatever they have in Russia, and again, in the interest of international relations, you smile and take your bite, and, you know, these things are required. Of course, the Russians are thinking the same thing. Concept, what was it? What was the one thing, the first time the U.S. and Russians flew together? I think it was peanut butter. They almost, you know, like ran out of the spacecraft, undocked, and went home after we pulled out peanut butter or something. I forget what it was, but it was like something so traditionally American, and they offered it, and they're all happy. And it was like, now, away. So, some things you don't put in space. Banned. Not only no, but hell no. You will not, don't even joke. This is not allowed. We will not, repeat not, it's not even a bad joke. No. Astronaut ice cream, ever. Full stop, end of conversation. You talk about astronaut ice cream and you lose friends. Even if it's a joke, because it's a bad joke, it's bad taste, it's bad tasting. But they did have ice cream once, real ice cream. About 10 years ago, they had to bring up a special medical freezer for medical samples. And they're sitting there going, well, you know, it's kind of silly to bring up an empty freezer when we could put something in it. And so the very first, and I just heard this last week, the very first ice cream, what they did, they went to the shop, or Publix down there, but they went to the ShopRite, and they got Blue Bunny ice cream. And they stuffed the freezer full. And that was probably the most important package the shuttle ever delivered to the space stations. The other thing, Tang. You will notice we do not have Tang. We will not have Tang. Nobody talks Tang, please. Actually, Tang kind of, in some form, flew in the early Geminis, but it's gotten to be such a cliche, and the orange drink that they fly now is so much better. No, there is no Tang. No bread. Why? You know, you've heard this a dozen. Oh, yeah, I've already had this. All right, crumbs.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had my back to you. Anyway, crumbs. Now, I love a fabulous, like, you know, Italian dinner, and it's all crusty bread. Think of all the crumbs that will float around the spacecraft, or get in your eyes, or you start breathing the crumbs. That's not funny after a bit. And all of a sudden, it loses its appeal. We fixed that problem. And it's not NASA engineering. Twinkies. Why no Twinkies? It's not obvious, but it's a funny story. Why can't you have Twinkies?
The phone.
Pardon?
Expansion, right?
No. Someone, and I don't know who, but it was in the days when we were flying up with Russia. Well, we still do. I don't know if it was a joke or if it was actually one of his hidden guilty pleasures. He wanted Twinkies. So they go to the store and they buy a bunch of Twinkies. And they ship it to Russia for the shuttle, or for the cargo ship to take up. One thing about Twinkies, there's a lot of things about Twinkies, but one thing about Twinkies. When was the last time you saw a stale Twinkie? Do they even exist? There's people who study thermodynamics that can prove it doesn't happen. They can't go stale. They don't decompose. And the Russians noticed, maybe just the way it was packaged, there was no expiration date on the package. Therefore, because Twinkies don't expire. But it didn't have an expiration date, and so their Russian food people decided this was not going to go on to the space station because we can't prove if it's stale or not. Obviously, they don't know Twinkies like we know Twinkies. So, no Twinkies on the space station. I think half of it's urban legend, but it makes for a great story. No alcohol. That probably doesn't surprise too many people, right? All right. As a NASA representative, I am not authorized to confirm nor deny the existence of alcohol on the space station. I am further not authorized to confirm or deny that the Russians keep their stash in the Russian segment in the Zvezda module. I am further not authorized to confirm or deny that the Russians do not send vodka up, but brandy. But again, I'm not authorized to talk about that. It turns out the Russians flew brandy all the time on their space station. And so, again, we can wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that there's a stash on the space station in the Russian segment that they bring out for New Year's. I do not know that for a fact, and of course everyone will deny it, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Sir?
I read a really good program about all the research they're getting into farting in space.
We will talk that. Look, if you really want to talk about it, I have pictures you don't want to see. Anyway, but there was going to be wine on our first space station, Skylab. And it went through, again, carbonated beverages, we'll talk that in a second, but the idea of hard liquor probably wasn't going to go, but they thought wine. And they went through a lot of them. Now, I remember having an old bottle of Cabernet, it was gorgeous, $20 bottle years ago. I was waiting for a special occasion, opened it up, and it had turned. Gee, not a surprise. Wine is a living thing. So they go, what can we have that's already preserved? Turns out it's sherry. It's already been heated. And so they found out, and it's in a clever book I have, which I'll talk about, it turns out Paul Masson sherry won all the taste tests. They were ready to fly it, and then NASA PR got involved and said no alcohol in space. It's a bureaucracy, all the rest. But yeah, we get back to, what is it with the bread? How are you going to fix that problem? Tortillas. It wasn't until the mid-'80s when we had a Mexican astronaut fly with us. And he's in Mexico, he wants tortillas. And all of a sudden, all through NASA, there's a collective smack of their foreheads going, of course. Now, they're all in Houston. I don't know if you've been to Houston, but every corner is a Mexican joint. Why didn't they figure out this ahead of time? I do not know. But that was the groundbreaking solution for bread in space. Tortillas. And yeah, we have tortillas here. Nowadays, culturally, this was 40 years ago, or 1986. Nowadays, we don't even give it a second thought. We just call it a wrap. 30, 50 years ago, the concept of tortillas in every day didn't exist, much less the idea of making a wrap. But nowadays, everywhere you go. Now we get to the fun stuff. I don't want to, oh no, I'm not running too late yet. Anyway, Samantha Cristoforetti, one of the more fun astronauts that walks around. She's an Italian fighter pilot, F-16 pilot. Flew a couple years ago for the European Space Agency, one of our major partners with the Russians and everyone else. She's Italian. She likes her espresso. Now, espresso is a difficult fluid. Has multiple phases, as we say. You have a foamy thing, you have just a regular fluid, and you have that little touch of sediment at the bottom. And all of it contributes to the real taste and experience of having an espresso. And it's a beautiful thing. But if you have coffee in a bag, you've shook it, you can call it espresso, it just turns out to be strong coffee and not a lot of it. It turns out, and again, I now have to look at my budget because I'd really love to get a Lavalazza espresso machine. They have one on the station. Lavalazza spent a couple $1 million designing this to make good espresso on the space station. And Samantha was the one from Italy to get it up and running and installed.
They have a cappuccino machine on the space station. Awesome.
It's not a cappuccino, it's espresso. I don't think they have a steamer. I don't think they figured that out yet. But okay, so we got, but you know, again, espresso in a bag? I mean, yeah, thanks for the effort. I really appreciate it. It probably makes great espresso. But again, just like bread, where the concept, where the idea of having good, crusty, you know, tactile things to eat is everything, the idea of espresso is to sip and just have all the aromas come up. And you need a proper cup. I mean, I'm going to run out and go find a Starbucks and get one right now. So it turned out one of the first missions onto the space station, a guy who had way too many clever ideas, and, well, he's just a great guy, invented the zero gravity coffee cup. And it turns out his specialty was fluids and weightlessness. And we'll talk, a guy by the name of Don Pettit, real character. And it turns out through a combination of capillary action and surface tension, fluids in the bowl tend to migrate to the sides and up sharp angles. We could talk later about how this helps restarting engines and weightlessness. And so you get your bag of espresso, you squirt it in, and it starts to separate and work its way up to the spout. You can turn it upside down, and it's just ready to, like a proper cup of espresso and a little place to stick your nose in. This is science. This is great stuff.
And it doesn't come out?
Oh, it works like a champ. You see, the way surface tension and capillary, this would be full. As you're sipping it, it tends to go to where the sharp angles are. And so there's a constant flow all coming to your mouth. You don't even have to, slurp it out.
And the top is open?
Pardon? Yeah, and it actually forms a depression in the middle, and because the surface tension takes up onto the sides. And there's a great picture, and I have it somewhere where, Samantha's sitting there sipping with the view of the earth behind her and her espresso. Life is good if you're an astronaut. Anyway, there's one reason to go into space now. Just announced 2 days ago. Anyone been to the Doubletree Hotel? Nice place, really is. I mean, if given half a chance, I'll go to a Doubletree. Not that my travels take me to a lot of places, but what's one of the great things about the Doubletree? They have announced that they are flying the very first cookie oven to the International Space Station. You see the Doubletree cookie recipe? They're going to make it up, and they're going to have fresh cookies, hot chocolate chip cookies. And why can they do it? Remember that problem with the bread? Yeah, crumbly. What's the thing about the Doubletree cookies? They're chewy. There's no crumbs. They fixed that problem. And so, 0 GK, what's that mean? Right on the door of the oven? 0 GK. Kitchen. Zero gravity kitchen. By Doubletree. Fully certified for space flight. I don't know when it's going up, but it'll be going soon. This is why you want to go into space. Now think of it. Doubletree cookies and espresso. Life is not bad. So anyway, here's what you can't do. And they're serious about this. Iron supplements. Like if you get, what do you call, a lot of differences between men's vitamins and women's vitamins is that women tend to have, especially going through menstruation, they have lower iron levels, so you have to replenish that. It turns out in space, your blood cells don't break down as fast as they do on Earth. And so your iron levels tend to be a little higher. And so any kind of iron supplement is actually more detrimental. So they don't put iron supplements into the foods. Chlorinated water. Because chlorine does terrible things to metals. I mean, you can design against it and all the rest, but it's more hassle than it's worth. Chlorine corrosion, it just does mucker things up. So they purify the water with iodine. Been doing it for whatever. The Russians actually use a silver solution, but we use iodine. And it's one of the reasons why you don't use iodized salt in space. Everything is iodine free because you already get it through the water. Salt and pepper shakers. What could go wrong with a salt shaker? If you ever get salt in your eye, you think the bread's bad? Bad idea. And no carbonated drinks. Let's do some physics. No carbonated drinks. What happens? If I have a thing of my favorite Diet Coke, you pour it in, describe what happens. Well, it's no pushing in space.
As the bubbles burst, it's not liquid fluid.
Well, fair point. But, you know, right here on Earth, you know, the Diet Coke goes to the bottom, the bubbles go up, you have a little head or a froth on top. Why? Because of gravity. Gas bubbles tend to go up because it's less dense than the fluid. But the problem is, if there's no gravity to push them, you end up with this homogeneous kind of froth that is half foam, half liquid throughout the entire container. And then you drink it. It might taste like Coke or beer or whatever carbonated beverage of choice you have, but now you're ingesting, you see, you're kind of counting on the idea that when you pour Diet Coke on Earth or beer, all the carbon dioxide goes away because it bubbles up and the bubbles whatever. But now you have it all inside you, and there's only two ways it goes out. This was not popular. We will talk about this more later. And we are running low on time. But you do get a pizza party every once in a while. Believe it or not, yes, you can have pizza. You have pizzas on the space station. And you go, wait a minute, whoa, that's too complex, and you're not sending up frozen Elios, that's for sure, thank goodness. Where do you think you can make a quick, easy pizza? Go down to the ShopRite right now and find out. Can't hear?
On a tortilla?
They probably thought of that, but there's better. I had an old girlfriend who absolutely loved this. You ever seen the Bobblies pizza crust? They're actually not horrible. They're certainly better than a frozen pizza. And you get a pizza crust. It lasts forever. I mean, it doesn't need refrigerating. And pizza sauce is a little sticky, so it'll stay on there. And here you see, you can't see it in the picture, but it's all boar's head pepperoni. They just send the package up. And they put some, you know, just sheets of mozzarella. And you don't see it in here, but in some of the other pictures. Do you remember, and again, man of a certain age, do you remember when it was kind of vogue for a short while when people had aluminum briefcases? Yes, we all cringe on that. Yeah, and the wide bell bottoms. Yeah, it was all part of the look.
Zero, I think they were closed.
I don't know that, but you're probably right. I remember my dad had one, and he looked like, you know, the shit for years, but yeah, that lasted a year. Anyway, they have what looks like one of those aluminum briefcases, which is where you put your food, and it's your food warmer. And it just has heating elements in it. You open it up, throw your stuff in, or your pizzas. And it may not be perfect, but it's the best pizza in the area, and Domino's not delivering.
Do they have clips to hold the pieces down? Or?
Can't hear.
Do they have clips to hold the pieces down? Or how's that
Oh,
work?
yeah. I forget exactly how it is, but yeah. Because, you know, if it floats up and makes a mess out of it, then you have to clean it. There's motivations in different ways that you'd never imagine. Absolute favorite menu item, shrimp cocktail. Probably up there with pineapple as far as being exotic. Nobody, I mean, you go to a party now, everyone's got shrimp cocktail. 50, 60 years ago, they didn't. And it's kind of a treat. Think of it, when you have shrimp cocktail, it's usually a nice occasion. The government's paying for it, you're not. So, shrimp cocktail has been, for 50 years, perennially the favorite menu item of astronauts in the U.S. Absolutely. And you'll find tons of shrimp cocktail. It used to be when the space shuttle went up, what they did was they mixed up a huge batch of shrimp cocktail for their welcoming parties. And yeah, you just put it in. Do you know you can get this freeze-dried? And it's expensive. It's like, you know, I was looking it up for this. First off, it takes a half hour for things to soak through. And it's like $100 for a can of it. And, you know, that's a bit much. I mean, we could have had it. I'm not going to wait that long, but shrimp cocktail. That was for Apollo, and that was for Skylab. The Cola Wars. They broke the surly bounds of Earth. Coke versus Pepsi. You can't make this stuff up. The Cola Wars. You thought it was bad here. NASA's always looking for commercial partners. And somehow Coke got, I don't know the exact etymology of it, but it was like, okay, what do you say we make a zero-G Coke can? Remember, we have that problem with gas and all the rest. We think we can fix it. And so NASA announced, we're partnering with Coke to make a zero-G Coke dispenser. Cool. It didn't take much time for the blinding flash and the mushroom cloud over at the Pepsi headquarters to go, what? We cannot allow this. And so we will be the one to win the Cola War challenge in space. They went back and forth, but it actually went up to the administrator of NASA as a political issue. NASA's not supposed to endorse commercial products. Do we have the labels on the cans or no? Who do we favor? Do we announce a winner? What seemed like a fun little exercise became a real political thing. But they both flew at the same time. And boy, did both turn out to be bad ideas. Real bad. That's what they look like. This is in the Smithsonian. Coke versus Pepsi. The Coke one, actually, I forget the exact number, but I think they dropped $250,000, and this was 30 years ago, $250,000 to $500,000 designing it. Pepsi basically took a Ready Whip can, and you squirt it in your mouth. Now, it didn't fix that problem with gas. And also remember, you don't have refrigeration. How good is warm, foamy Coke? It just becomes a sticky mess, and then you belch a lot and other things. Nah, that didn't work. But being good scientists and engineers that we all are, they fixed that problem. Hey, technology moves on. Pepsi probably walked away a little humiliated. However, Coke perfected the soda dispenser. This took up not a small amount in the spacecraft. It had a cooling unit, a degasser, the whole smash, and dispensed Coke and Diet Coke. And so you could have cool, cold Pepsi Cola, no ice, on the space station. You can't make this up. This is where the smarts of America are dedicated. We ought to be proud. And there it is, computer controlled. It took up 2 storage units, which is a huge amount. So we're talking 2 units about, 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep by 19 inches wide, that high. But by God, you had Diet Coke. Between that and the cookies and the espresso. Oh, we didn't pay for that. This is all Coke. Think how much they spend on stupid Cola Wars, taste tests, or new Coke. This was a drop in the bucket or a blob in space. But anyway, we're done. It's supper time.